What is it about rich people that just love living like they're poor? Hey guys, this is Sunny Samurai, and today I'm going to be diving into Retsuko's relationship with Tadano on the hit series Aggretsuko on Netflix, and what that tells us about toxic positivity and self-worth. Yeah, we're going in deep today. If you're new here, I just want to quickly mention that I make cartoon reviews, share fashion ideas, and pretty much find any excuse to geek about Japanese lifestyle and culture. So if that sounds like you, hit that subscribe button. So Retsuko... wow. So Retsuko starts dating this guy named Tadano, who is basically a rich tech guy who's super successful because he's like this, I don't know, this tech genius who can do like self-driving cars and yada yada yada. Tadano has a number of qualities which at first seem pretty harmless, but over time, they start to pile up. Tadano is so rich and so talented that he can literally pilot a plane to a specific ramen shop that he loves for their first date. Yet at the same time, by the time that they settle into their relationship, their idea of Retsuko coming over is just her sleeping in the back seat of his dirty limo and eating takeout by herself. He basically explains to Retsuko that he pretends or acts like he's unemployed, basically because if he starts to treat his work like an actual job, it won't be fun anymore. And when he explains that, it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, I can get with that. That's pretty cool. Like, that's a good way of looking at it. If you treat your work like a job, of course it's going to be less fun. Yet, that's a little tiny bit of a red flag there. It misses a couple of steps. Is this really something that everybody has the luxury of doing? Not really. Is he suggesting that everybody should do that just yet at that point in time? No. So it seems fine. He can do that and he has the luxury to do that. So it's fine on his end. But at that point in time, that is the first, tiny little hint that he's kind of living in a different world from Retsuko. I mean, if only we could all live like that. Am I right? When their relationship comes out to public, Retsuko basically hides from work for a while, like, crashing at his limo because, she is too afraid to face everyone after their relationship is common public knowledge. Tadana comes up with this brilliant idea and even convinces Retsuko that if she doesn't like her job, then she should just quit and do what she really wants to do, whatever that is. When Retsuko tells him that she has responsibilities that she should, think about before making such a hasty decision, he tells her that responsibility is just a form of delusion in order to make ourselves, in order to excuse inaction on our part. Yeah, sure. If only it was that simple. And that's when we start to see how he's just like constantly throwing these big, overarching philosophical ideas, these overarching social theories at her and telling her, what's wrong with society as a whole and what's wrong with people who don't live like him and yada, yada, yada. He just throws those things at her without actually, talking to her and relating to her and listening to her individual situation. Mind you, he's her boyfriend. So he's so wealthy, he's basically out of touch with reality. He's out of touch with Retsuko's experience, and there's no real true way that they can communicate here. On a theoretical sense, you want to believe that, maybe he does have some points, but on a practical level, like a real tangible practical level that, Retsuko can apply, he's skipping a lot of steps here. And he's only able to do that, he can only be afforded to do that because of the situation that he's in, which is a lot more privileged. Again, sounds pretty familiar, am I right? I'm willing to bet that Tadano actually came from a background of privilege since the very beginning. He was born into a more privileged status. It's very hard for me to imagine that someone who built themselves from the bottom up would exhibit this kind of behavior, because even when your situation is better, you still have a certain way of thinking and certain behaviors that follow with you because of where you came from. It's hard for me to imagine that someone who built themselves from the bottom up would be unable to relate, to empathize with someone who's coming from Retsuko's position. Even if they're super rich at this point, they would at least be able to empathize a little bit. But he's just like, no, like responsibility is an illusion and yada yada yada. And he's unable to communicate with her. And someone who built themselves from the bottom up would also be the kind of person, a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times you're more likely to see that they're a little bit paranoid about losing the success that they've gained. They're a little bit more paranoid about losing everything that they worked for. So a lot of times you might see them working even harder or continuing to be like kind of almost even a workaholic sometimes once they reach that position, because they're so focused and so worried about losing what they have now. But with Tadano, he just kind of lives through life like, whatever, guys, like just take it chill. Like if you don't want your work to be not fun, just pretend like it's a hobby, guys. Live like a bum, live like you're poor, it's fine, Responsibility, that's an illusion. You don't have to worry about all that. I mean, someone like that likely never had to worry about when they'll get their next meal. Likely didn't have to worry about when they'll, whether or not they might not be able to pay the rent on time, things like that. Whether or not he started out rich or not, I think that makes a difference. I'm remembering a thread that I read not so long ago where they basically like exposed, for lack of a better word, how rich people have more likely to behave cheap than people who come from more modest backgrounds. Came with experiences with that from like university and all kinds of walks of life, and I was like, holy crap, like I thought I was the only one who kind of witnessed this, but it's not just me. Like based on my relationship history, yeah, I'd say that's pretty spot on. It's pretty confusing and overwhelming for someone like Retsuko, who basically is like in her mid-20s. She just entered the workforce. She has a job that she doesn't really like all that much, and she doesn't even know what she wants. She doesn't know what she wants in life. There are those of us who are lucky enough to reject someone like Tadano as garbage based on, gut instinct and pre-existing beliefs alone. But if you're anything like me or Retsuko, you're likely to begin to think that you're the one with the problem, that you're the one who has an issue for not agreeing with Tadano. Because again, on a theoretical sense, it kind of it makes sense on paper, on a 2D level, on a superficial level, it has some, sense to it. But beyond that, it doesn't. This is where the issue of self-worth and self-validity comes in. If you do not have that, if you're struggling with self-worth, if you're struggling with validating your feelings, and then on top of that, you don't even know what it is that you want in the first place, you're still kind of figuring that out because again, you're young, and let's face it, this world is pretty freaking confusing and overwhelming. Well, you're kind of predisposed to allow someone like Tadano to kind of push their own beliefs on you and be like, okay, I guess. And you might end up suppressing the feelings that you actually have, that maybe this isn't something that's right, maybe this isn't something that's right for me. The next red flag with Tadano, and I guess is the major thing that kind of makes Retsuko crack in one way or another, is the fact that Tadano doesn't care for marriage. Tadano does not believe in the institution of marriage, that it's just BS to him. Whereas with Retsuko, she's not sure. I think on a deeper level, she does want marriage, but she hasn't really come to terms yet with the fact that that is something that she wants. Because for the first time, she actually has to verbalize what it is that she feels. Because a lot of times, that's the thing with relationships. We don't expect what it is that we'll have to verbalize until we're placed in that situation in a relationship, things that you just assume everyone would agree on, you find yourself having to explain to someone. Her mother, for instance, is the one that's forcing marriage down her throat, and she's just like, slow down. And then later on, she meets this guy who's the total opposite. So it's kind of funny how, society just kind of, a lot of, being in your 20s is just society constantly forcing their own, projecting their own, ideas of what is a good, valid way to live. And you're just kind of trying to figure out what is true to you versus what is garbage for you. It doesn't resonate with you. So being put in that kind of situation, you can end up just suppressing your true feelings and, lying to yourself basically that I agree with this guy. Because at the end of the day, Tadano, he's a pretty cool guy. He does some pretty cool stuff with tech. He's rich, he's famous, and he basically goes against everything that her mother kind of forces down her throat. It's kind of like a breath of fresh air for Retsuko. Maybe she doesn't care much for the fame or anything like that, but just the fact that he lives such a laid-back lifestyle is kind of, alluring to her at first. And I myself can see how, I've also gone down that road before, only to realize, whoa, hold up. Me and this person can't really vibe. Me and this person can't really communicate. There's some things they'll never understand about my situation. As someone who has struggled with allowing others to dictate my preferred relationship style, among other things, it's kind of like a breath of fresh air to see Retsuko, who's, pretty, normie in terms of what, she prefers, what she desires, meet that kind of same situation and doubt herself, doubt, whether or not it's actually okay to even want these things, doubt what it is that she wants in the first place, because she isn't even aware of what she wants yet. She just kind of comes against something that she is starting to feel like she doesn't want. And that's usually what's more likely to happen in life. A lot more often, you're likely to meet someone or meet a situation where you find out that you don't want this than you are to find yourself in a situation where, yes, this is what I want. Finding something that you really do want actively is a little bit easier than being able to say no. Because sometimes, saying no is a lot more powerful and takes a lot more guts than, just being the yes man or the yes woman or person. She basically finds out that it's okay to be kind of basic. It's okay to be a little bit basic. And, people will, and the thing is, that's not necessarily being basic, but, people who have different ideas of what it is to live a full life might call someone like Retsuko basic, but it's for her situation, for her experience, it's more than that, and that's the thing. I've always agreed with people who argue that marriage is just a bullshit construct built on patriarchy and toxic capitalism. Yet, call me a hypocrite, but can I really say no to wearing a beautiful, gorgeous dress on a day that is dedicated to celebrating literally me and the actual love of my life? Not really, no. This leads me to the next point that I really love about this show. And it's the fact that, they emphasize the importance of having a support system. So with Retsuko's case, for instance, it's only with, the support of her friends that she's finally able to stand up for herself in front of Tadano. And without that, it would have been a lot more difficult for her. And it could have taken a much, much longer time for her to get to that point, if she ever does at all, which is even scarier to think about. Which is why it's so important to have a support system, because a lot of times your friends, especially when you're in a relationship, they often know you better than you even know yourself. They might, see things, changes in behavior in you that you don't even notice yet. For instance, she just stopped showing up to work for a while and they know that something is up. Like, if you just stop showing up for work suddenly, in Retsuko's case, they're like, there's something weird going on here. She actually, for a second there, you know, submitted her letter of resignation to her job just because Tadano told her to. Was she listening to herself in that situation? No, she wasn't. They definitely really simplified it here for the purposes of fitting it into like a 15-minute episode. But you see that happen a lot with people that get into these kind of controlling relationships, or just relationships in general where the desires of the two people kind of clash, but because you're so enamored with that other person, you kind of just go with what the other person thinks is best for you or thinks is best for the relationship, even if it goes against what is true to you, what is true internally for you. Without their help, this could have gone super downhill, with her just getting cut off from society and then quitting her job just to live in the back seat of his limo until the end of her days, basically rendering her completely codependent on him, which is definitely a recipe for what, ladies? Emotional abuse. Like, even her annoying, abusive boss ended up saying something to her, which honestly kind of made me tear up a bit. He basically tells her that he chose marriage not because it's perfect, not because it's a life-changing thing that will make you a better person, but because he chose it as his anchor to keep on living through this very mundane, unspecial life. He also even goes as far to hint at the fact that Tadano is only able to view things the way that he does because he lives in such a bubble of privilege. But honestly, at the end of the day, do you really need such a convoluted reason in order to support why you want something? I mean, as long as you're not hurting anybody, it's more than okay to stick to your own feelings in terms of what you want without having anybody make it valid for you. Like, do you really need someone else to have the same opinion as you and even break it down for you in order for it to finally click for you that how you feel is valid? And that's the thing, a lot of times it's only in that situation where we have that kind of support system to remind us who we are and remind us that it's okay to disagree in this kind of situation. It's only in that situation that we're able to finally accept our own feelings, finally accept that, you know, maybe this person isn't for me. Maybe that situation, maybe that thing isn't for me. And if you're someone like Retsuko, it's a lot more difficult to navigate. I think as you grow older, maybe it gets easier. I hope it gets easier. But when you're in your 20s and stuff, it's very difficult to start to shave away at the things that, you know, people try to tell you that you should want versus what it is that you actually want or just don't freaking care about. It's so beautiful to see her finally take action in this one thing in her life. And they symbolize it so perfectly when she tells Tadano, hey, can you turn off the auto drive on the car? Because I'm driving. That basically tells you in a visual sense that she is finally deciding where this is going to go. She's deciding where this relationship is going to go, physically and metaphorically. I didn't even catch that the first time I watched it. It was the second time that I watched it that I was like, oh wait, okay. So she's basically driving where this relationship is going to go now. This is when she takes him to the karaoke bar and finally tells him, hey, this is how I feel. And it's freaking beautiful. By telling him the truth, and to herself, not just to Tadano, but to herself, that this is what she wants, which is to be that cliche, cheesy bride who's blushing in a big, beautiful dress. When she tells him that, she's finally regaining the control that she had lost being in this relationship. He stays trying to convince her why she's wrong right until the very end. Sometimes people really try to, you know, tell them why, you know, this belief or this desire that you have is wrong and this is why you should live your life more like mine and just proceed in this relationship the way that I see it. Retsuko sticks by her desires. She sticks by her own boundaries and says, and she sticks up for herself. She tells him, nope, I want to be a cheesy, cliche bride. Nope, I want to be married to you and I want to have kids, and if we can't do that, I won't be who I really am. And that is so difficult to do in a relationship, because until you not only identify what it is that you want and also stick up for it, you won't be able to stand up for yourself. You won't be able to live a life that is authentic to yourself, or be in a relationship with someone while still having a loving relationship with yourself as well. She's not just telling him that she wants to be a cheesy bride. She also tells him, I don't want to quit my job. I don't want to quit my job because I don't have a grandiose, entrepreneurial, ambitious dream. My only dream is to get married. And, she finally accepts the fact that that's okay. I'm glad that this show had an arc like this, because they basically take two people and they show you, look, this person prefers A and that person prefers B. This person has a better way of explaining or convincing people why this way of living is better, or why this desire is better or more worthy. But just because they have a better way of explaining it or whatever it is, it does not make it more worthy than that other person's desire, which might not be the same. As long as they're not hurting anybody, we can just live however the heck we want, and it's valid, it's worthy, and we can't let any kind of toxic, positive, new age, violent thoughts to dictate to us that this is the way to live, and if you don't live like this, you're just a trashy normie who can't even think for yourself. You're valid no matter what it is that you desire.